This collection of paranormal stories were written by the Reddit poster Internal Car 8922. They have very kindly given me permission to narrate them. Story 1. This story is from when I was a security guard who used to fill in extra coverage at various sites. I'm one of the guys they can send anywhere, and during this time, I fill in shifts at some 60 different projects. First off, I know not all of you believe in otherworldly things. No cheese off my biscuit, you do you. I'm not here to tell you you are wrong. I can only share what I experienced for myself and leave you to draw your own conclusions. I am assigned to an extended coverage over the better part of a year in a 100-year-old haunted building in the downtown area of our major city. I will spend most of my weekend nights patrolling while they are in the process of reconstruction and asbestos removal. Every weekend, I arrive to find different areas inaccessible due to asbestos abatement or other construction needs. The project takes longer, as a fair amount of the building is being actively used by businesses, which makes the reconstruction trickier. Many of the changes being made are a postmodern insult to the classic features of the building. It hurts my heart to watch the beautiful and elegant appointments give way to the new, stylish and moronic ones. The bathrooms had solid granite dividers. Now they feature mundane modern metal ones. Classic 100-year-old chandeliers get replaced by LED moon ring lights. It's like putting bright lipstick and rave glasses on the Mona Lisa. At the beginning of the construction, there are 2 side hallways that remain intact from the original build-out of the building and that feature the original office configuration. They will both be destroyed before the construction is finished. One of them is on the 12th floor, and even in the brightest light of day, that particular corridor is oppressive and creepy. You simply cannot get enough light into that space to make it feel bright and cheery. Now, I am told tales by the tenants and staff of various deaths associated with the building over its 100-year history. The lawyer shot by his jilted lover on the top floor. It was the long-forgotten trial of the century from the same century that saw the O.J. Simpson case. She was also acquitted despite having confessed to doing it. The young woman in white who purportedly tried to fly from the roof and failed. The 3-year-old who cries in the basements. Something to do with childhood measles, I'm told. But nowhere do I find any reports that feature the 12th floor. That notwithstanding, there is something dark and brooding in that corridor. If the light is down that hall at night, I shine my flashlight down it and move on quickly. Now, there is one particularly active night, by which I mean the whole building seems to be vibrating with energy and strange things afoot. It is the 13th of the month and a full moon at that. Wheeled scaffolding in one area under construction is in a different location on every patrol. I never see or hear it move, but it is all over the place that night. Now, this has happened before and remains a creepy curiosity, but this night it was just more than normal. On the second to top floor, I see what appears to be the shadow of another person coming up behind me, and from the position of its head relative to my own head, they are maybe 5 feet away when I spin around and see nothing. Just an empty hallway. Looking back the other way, the second shadow is gone, and so I go down quickly to the 12th floor. As I walk down the long main corridor towards the old creepy side corridor, I feel like I am being watched. I look down that creepy pit of darkness without the use of a light, and there, to my horror, see in the blackest black against the black, the shadow figure of a man standing in the middle of the hall, with his head flopped to one side in the most unnatural way. If not for it being at eye level, it really looks like a hanging man. With no hesitation, I shine my flashlight down the hall to get a better look and see nothing. Just an empty hallway, I lower the flashlight again, and now it is just a black hallway. The figure does not reappear in the returning darkness. I've had enough of this corridor for the night. I will not patrol it again this shift. I turn to go down the stairs to the 11th floor. I have this intense feeling like I should watch my step, like someone or something wishes to push me down the stairs. I grip the rails on both sides, and as I descend a few steps down, I feel a gust of air at my back. There is nothing in the building that can produce a draft on these stairs. This weekend is the only time I ever felt a gust of air on any of the stairs in the building. But now, while feeling like I need to watch my step, I do. In the early morning, shortly after sunrise, I turn the keys over to my relief for the next 12 hours. I say nothing to the person on the next shift of the events of the night. When I return 12 hours later for my next shift, he shares with me having felt unsafe on one of the stairs in the building and having feeling wind at his back on it. He can't figure out where it came from. I ask him which stairs. Of course, it's the same stairs from the 12th floor to the 11th floor where I had felt it on the night before. My first patrol that night, I again feel unsafe on the stairs and a much smaller puff of air at the back of my head. I turn my head and yell, "You've got to do better than that if you really want to scare me." Nothing else happens this shift. The building returns again to quiet and calm. Until they tear out this creepy corridor to replace it with a modern office configuration, I always make sure to get all the lights down I turned on before the sun goes down. Some 4 months later, I learn from one of the tenants that a man had hung himself in that hall on the 12th floor during the 1930s. Somehow this news came as no surprise to me. Meanwhile, the scaffolding still moves around at night, even with no one in the building to move it. I once or twice hear a crying sound in the basement. The first time I think it might be a cat, but the building manager assures me there are no cats. It's a 3-year-old ghost, he says. He also says he doesn't believe in ghosts, so... One tenant relates to being approached on the top floor by a dapper older gentleman in a very outdated suit who simply vanishes before saying anything. He thinks it is the shot lawyer. I never see anything there. That floor feels at peace if he is there. He's not as upset about things as the hung man of the 12th floor. Now, when they do start to dismantle that original hallway on the 12th floor, the creepy presence brooding down there becomes rather more attractive and a bit less predictable. I now feel it increasingly out in the main corridor that still remains essentially unchanged from the original build. At first, it feels angry towards me. It wants me scared and it wants me hurt. I dread going to that floor on every patrol. Some patrols I take the elevator from the floor above or below, look out at that floor, and then go to the next floor and leave it at that. Then I start to feel it there in the middle of the main corridor in front of the elevators waiting for me. If I take the stairs down that are next to the side corridor, I always feel the malicious presence wanting me to slip, trip, or fall down those stairs. But to be honest, I hate going there for a completely different reason too. I cannot begin to express how much I dislike the tacky changes they are making to this classic building. It feels like a violation of her beautiful turn-of-the-century soul. On occasion, when the creepy brooding presence seems to be absent, I look over at what they are doing to the space that had been the side corridor, and I shake my head, and honestly weep a little. It is such an affront. Suddenly, I realize I am not alone. That unseen being is there, but it is no longer angry towards me. It seems to have decided I'm not part of the problem, but feels the same way about the changes as I do. It follows me down 2 more floors before it withdraws. As it leaves, it feels to me like it can't just stay away from the 12th floor, its floor, for very long at all. This changes my patrols for the remainder of the time I'm working this site. It is never again an angry, creepy experience to visit that floor. This, despite the door to the new offices in the area of the old side corridor constantly unlocking itself. I have to relock it at least 3 times a night. I often feel its presence a floor or two before the 12th floor, and it stays with me a floor or two after. Sometimes I feel thoughts in my head. It's sort of like the experience I often have where I'm about to open my mouth and say something, just to have a friend or sibling say the exact thing like they had thought it first and I had somehow gotten it from them before they spoke. Or like the way I always know that my children are lying to me. They really hate that. It feels like the being wants me to know that he didn't kill himself. This was done to him by others. This is repeated often, but then a few months later a quiet admission. I did it. I can't take it back. Accompanied with a wave of such feeling of sorrow, regret and remorse. Then it feels like it wants to leave here and maybe go home with me. I simply say, that will never work. My family wouldn't want you around. That floor feels very sad the rest of that shift. I look into it. I can never find his name or likeness or the full story of his hanging. Only the rumour shared by a tenant of his death. I never have a name to call him by. Since this particular contract ended, I've never been back to that building. I suspect if I ever do return, I'll still have a strange friend waiting for me there. Before I continue to the next story, I just want to say thank you for choosing to watch this video, and I hope you're enjoying my narration. If you are, please go ahead and hit the like button, leave me a comment, let me know what you think of the video, and if you don't already, subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out. Story 2. This story starts around the time of the 7-year itch in my marriage, but before I travelled all around America. It continues to today. But first, the usual disclaimers. Quack, 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 quack. On a lark, my beautiful wife purchases a plush white duck in a Santa hat and a green with red plaid scarf from a catalogue. She is rather fond of it. I don't mind it at first either. It's cute. If you squeeze its left wing or its protruding tongue, it quacks the tune Jingle Bells. Well, at least the chorus. It's annoying, but mitigated by the fact that you have to initiate the quacking by triggering it, which she delights in doing repeatedly, especially once she knows I'm not a big fan. After the tease, she just can't help herself. The kids love it, so during the winter, not just the Christmas season to my chagrin, it takes up permanent residency on the love seat in our living room. And then, the thing starts to take on a life of its own. Suddenly, one day, while I'm seated on the sofa next to the love seat sorting through today's mail, it starts to quack without being invited. Just out of the blue. Quack, quack, quack. Jingle bells in January. Beautiful wife is just coming down the hall at this moment. I thought you didn't like him. Me? I don't. It just started up on its own. Beautiful wife laughs. Sure it did, sweetie. Me? It did. And then, as if to prove a point, it did it again. Quack, quack, quack. Beautiful wife is then genuinely surprised. Well, I guess it did then. From then on, it randomly and sporadically starts to sing at unexpected moments. But my wife and kids notice that it only seems to do it when I'm around. I think they're kidding me and just say, "Good one." They weren't kidding me. Finally comes the day that winter decorations give way to spring, and I happily place my wife's toy duck in the storage box with the other decorations. These go into the shelves in the laundry room. About 1/4 of the basement in this house is laundry room and storage. And every now and then, when I'm in that room, I hear it quacking at me again from within that box. I point this out to my beautiful wife. She laughs and says I'm paranoid. She never hears it, and she spends a lot more time in the laundry room than I do. Then, one day, when we are both in there, it sings again. My wife says, "Well, what do you know? Never heard it do that before." Then the year turns and once again the Christmas decorations are put on display. Again, to my dismay, the hated duck has given its spot on the love seat. And now, practically every time I enter the room, it sings at me. Again, the wife and kids tell me it only does this when I'm around. Again, I believe them to be joking. Come Christmas Day, one of the kids' new toys needs a couple of AA batteries. With a wicked smile that even the Grinch would have given props to, I steal the batteries from the evil duck. Beautiful wife cannot protest too much. She'll just get new ones for it tomorrow when the stores are open again. Cue the next day when I come in with the mail and the fowl starts its cheery song at me. I find my wife in the bedroom. She's drinking hot chocolate and watching Gone with the Wind. She watches it every Christmas and often a few more times during the days after. It's her thing. Me. I see you didn't waste any time at all getting batteries for your evil duck. Beautiful wife. I haven't really been able to get that today. Why? Me. It's singing at me again. We go and investigate. There are no batteries in it. In fact, one of the wires to the battery pack case is broken. She accuses me of breaking it on purpose to silence him. I protest, but only end up sounding more guilty. It doesn't sing. Pressing the wing and the tongue does nothing. But if I walk into the room and no one else is there, it starts up again, singing its happy, irritating tune. It will be 2 more years until beautiful wife actually hears it doing this. She's perplexed, but cannot get past how cute and cartoonish the duck is. This doesn't creep her out at all. She likes that it bothers me. It remains enthroned in the love seat. We live in this same house for years. At a certain point, the creepy evil duck is no longer stored, but remains in its place in the living room. It still quacks at me. It still has no power source. I hate it. When we move, it moves with us. We only live a year in that house before moving to a much smaller place. To my relief, the duck goes into deep storage in a storage unit, where it remains until this day. I've thought of secretly discarding it, but she has made me promise to do no such thing. But every now and again, when I'm looking for something in our storage unit, I hear quacking coming from a box deep in the back. I hate that damn duck. Story 3. This story is not my own, but belongs to my beautiful wife. Since it is from her youth, from a time before we knew each other, we will call her Awkward Tomboy here. All dialogue is translated from her native language to the best of my ability. But first, the usual disclaimers. My nose makes bubbles. The cast. Awkward Tomboy, the child who will someday be my wife. Flamingo, her mother. Melanie, her grandmother. Ellie, her sister, slightly older. The General, himself. The background. At some point in the past, to keep things anonymous, let's say between 1600 and 1850 BCE, there was a war between my wife's birth country and one of their neighbours. During that war, one of her ancestors died in battle. He was a cavalry general and fought valiantly. His side won the day, but alas, he did not live to see it. He is also the ancestor of Melanie and Flamingo. Melanie lives until her death in the same home he lived in during his lifetime. Even though it is a bit of a drive away from her home, Awkward Tomboy and her siblings often visit and stay the night at Grandma's house. The horses. While there was a time that horses were kept on this property, that has not been the case for over 100 years at the time of this story. Despite the decided lack of horses anywhere near the house, many nights one can hear horses neighing close by. There are never any hoofprints or droppings. The fence is always secured and closed, but the horses still sing at night. Often a horse can be heard galloping up to the house and pulling to a stop with a neigh. But again, no way one could be in the property, let alone galloping at that speed. Army boots. Sometimes one can also hear the sound of solid wooden-soled boots, such as the military of earlier times would wear walking around both outside and inside their home. This is often accompanied with the sounds of the front door opening and closing before both and after the boots are heard. Melanie just calls it another visit from the General. The night of no sleep. This night, awkward Tomboy is visiting with her 3 older sisters. Ellie and her are sharing a bed in a room just off the main salon. They should be asleep, but they are not. Ellie has a great sense of humour, and they are joking and laughing well after any signs of anyone else still being awake have long since subsided. While they are joking, they hear the horses sing. They shush each other and listen, and then slowly work up some steam again where they hear the galloping horse and shush each other again. The horse stops. They hear the jangle of its bridle and the thud of 2 solidly built boots hitting the ground. Now they duck their heads under the covers and pretend to be asleep. While faking sleep, they listen and the boots approach the front door. The bolt is heard to move and the door opens. The boots cross the salon. Now they hear the bolt and their door being drawn back. Wide-eyed, they stare at each other and well and truly pretend to be out cold, while still staring at each other. The boots stop at the front door of the bed for what feels like an eternity. Long seconds become minutes. An awkward Tomboy is about to take a peek out when she sees the boots start to move again. Slowly, deliberately, the boots walk all the way around the bed, stopping again at the foot of the bed. Then they go back out of the bedroom and the door closes and the bolt slides back into place, across the salon, and then the front door opens again. The boots go out the front door, and again it closes and the bolt slides back into place. The boots walk back and the horse neighs. Jangle of bridle and stirrups and the horse gallops off again. The singing of the other horses starts to fade. They stare at each other and let out a whispered scream. They spend the rest of the night talking about what just happened and decidedly not sleeping. They cannot sleep. As they see it, there are 3 primary problems with what they heard. 1. The front door is locked from the inside by a sliding bolt. It can only be locked and unlocked from the inside. 2. The door to the bedroom has the same kind of lock. Only someone in the bedroom could lock or unlock that door. 3. The bed is up against the wall. There is no physical way to walk all the way around it. No one else reported hearing anything that night. They will return to sleep over again at Melanie's house, but it will be some time before they do. Story 4. As usual, this is not my story. It isn't even my grandpa's story, although he often shared it with his grandchildren alongside his stories, and also recorded it in a hand-typed retelling of his life. This story belongs to his father, Frog. As all of this was well after the events in question, there is no original dialogue. Cast: Duck, my grandpa. Frog, his father. Emu, his mother. Chipmunk, Duck's aunt and stepmom. Walrus, Frog's father. Crook. Well, let's just see if a clever reader can sort that one out on their own. If you've been following Duck's story, you know that he is raised on a ranch, and at the tender age of 6, loses his mother to appendicitis. In the aftermath, his aunt, Chipmunk, comes by often to help his widower father with his 4 young children, and eventually she becomes his stepmother. In the end, Frog will have 10 children between his 2 wives. This story is from later in Duck's life, after he had left the ranch and established his own career in the big city. In his later years, Frog follows in his father Walrus's footsteps by becoming a world-class alcoholic, to the degree and point that it eventually costs him his business and property and results in much heartache and sorrow. Inebriated thinking leads to poor decision-making and trusting the wrong folks. And when the 3 get together for a party, well, let's just say I have some great beachfront property for sale in Arizona if anyone is interested, and a Nigerian prince who would like to make your acquaintance. Frog has been taken to the cleaners by a crook. He has made a bad deal, and while most fair deal folks in these parts would realize it was wrong and give him a pass, Crook is not a fair-dealing folk. This sort of short-sightedness is the bread, butter and retirement plan of Crook. No way Frog will get a pass. He ruminates over this situation in the best thinking spot he knows of, the local saloon. As he contemplates the full depth, breadth and consequence of what has just happened, and what it means for Chipmunk and the children still at home, it both gives him a tremendous sense of foreboding and guilt, as well as makes his blood boil. A few more rounds of liquid courage later, the poor decision-making kicks in proper. He determines the best way out of the situation is to eliminate the source of his trouble, Crook, before he can make his legal claim and ruin Frog's life. And to add to the spectacularly clear thinking and plotting that he is up to at this point, he shares this with the bartender. He then gets up and excuses himself to go do it. He leaves with a determination and anger, and just enough of a buzz to not consider the consequences. He returns about 5 minutes later, white as a sheet, and considerably calmer. He gives a shotgun to the bartender and asks him to hold on to it for him. "You did it?" asked the barkeep. No," comes the reply. "And if you hold on to that weapon for me, it will be easier not to do it." The bartender, sensing there is something more going on here, offers Frog one on the house and asks him why the change of heart. "Well, I was all set to do it, and I got my gun and I was heading over to his place to end this mess. But as I passed by his fence, Emu stopped me." "Emu? She died a lifetime ago." "Yeah, I was mighty surprised to see her. She told me to stop my silly pettiness. If I carried on with this stupidity, I'd never be able to see her again. None of the consequences of what Crook did next would be as bad as me going through with a murder. She loves me and needs me not to be stubborn about this one." And then she was gone. This moment did mark a turning point that spiraled into him basically never forgiving himself for the loss and trying to numb the awareness. But at the end of his days, the only person he ever really hurt was himself. And he swore right up to the end that the only reason he didn't become a murderer is because his long-dead wife stopped him in his drunken state from making bad situations eternally worse. I've placed flowers on their graves when I've been in the area for Memorial Day. Frog is buried between Chipmunk and Emu on the side of a mountain with a beautiful view of the valley. It is peaceful and remote. When I've bought flowers, I felt such a warmth of appreciation and acceptance. It could be in my head, but I don't believe it is. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I know there is a ton of content out there, and I sincerely appreciate you watching this right through to the end. Again, if you enjoyed it, please go ahead and hit the like button, and if you don't already, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and select the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of my future uploads. Also, please leave a comment on this video, let me know what you thought of it. Comments really help with the YouTube algorithm and will really help my channel to grow. Also, let me know what type of videos you would like to see more of on this channel. That really helps me branch out into new subject matters. If you have a story you would like me to narrate, please email it to me at stories@daredevil.com. I'm getting really close to my next major milestone of 100,000 subscribers. Thank you to everyone who is continuing to subscribe to this channel and contributing to its growth by liking videos and leaving comments. I'm currently in the process of working on a 3-hour Wendigo story video featuring completely original stories. Once I reach 100,000 subscribers, I'll have that ready to release for you all. If you want to support my channel even further, there are a number of ways you can do so. You can buy me a coffee via my Ko-fi account, check out my Teespring store and consider purchasing one of my shirt designs, or simply help me out by sharing my content with anyone you might think is interested in watching it. Thanks again.